Hello everyone, welcome to our class. My name is Ko-Chen Lee. In today's sections, we will talk about software and user account setting. This is today's outline. We will show you the software installation changes and how to master user account control and maintain application integrity. Compared to the earlier releases of Windows, the processes of installing, configuring, running, and maintaining software work differently in Windows Server 2008. Primarily, this is because of an enhanced security architecture that changes the way accounts are used and the way applications are installed and run. Windows Server 2008 has two general types of user accounts: standard user accounts and administrator user accounts. Standard user account can perform any general computing tasks, such as starting programs, opening documents, and creating folders, and any support tasks that do not affect other users or the security of computers. Administrators, on the other hand, have complete access to the computer and can make changes that affect other users and the security of the computer. In Windows Server 2008, software installation, configuration, and maintenance are processes that require elevated privileges. Because of user account control, Windows Server 2008 is able to detect software installation. When Windows Server 2008 detects a software installation-related process, it prompts for permissions or consents prior to allowing you to install, configure, or maintain software on your computer. It also means administrator privileges are required to perform the following software maintenance tasks: change and update, repair and reinstall, uninstall and remove. Part of the installation process involves validating your credentials and checking the software's compatibilities with Windows Server 2008. Most software applications have a setup program that uses Windows installers, Install Shield, or Wise Install. The job of the installer program is to track the installation process and make sure the installation completes successfully. If the installation fails, the installer is also responsible for restoring your computer to its original state by reversing all the changes made by the setup program. Although this works great in theory, you can encounter problems, particularly when you are installing older programs. Older programs won't have and won't be able to use the features of the latest versions of installer programs. And as a result, they sometimes are unable to uninstall a program completely. As a partially uninstalled program can spell disaster for your computer, you should protect yourself by backing up a server prior to installing any software. Before installing any software, you should do the following. Check to see whether it is compatible with Windows Server 2008. You can check the software packaging, which should specify whether the program is compatible or provide a Windows Server 2008 logo. Alternatively, you can check the software developer's website for a list of compatible operating systems. Check the software developer's website for updates for the programs. If available, download the updates prior to installing the software, and then install them immediately after completing the software installation. To avoid known capabilities issues with legacy applications, Windows Server 2008 includes automatic detection features known as the Program Compatibility Assistant. Although the Program Compatibility Assistant is helpful, it can detect or avoid all compatibility issues. You might have to configure compatibilities manually. You can install the program by the following list steps. First, start Windows Explorer. Extract the program's setup files using one of the following techniques. If the program is distributed in a zip file, right-click the files and select Extract All. If the program is distributed in a self-extracting executable file, double-click the exe file to extract the setup files. Second, in Windows Explorer, browse the setup folders and find the necessary setup program file. Double-click the setup file to start the installation process. Third, when setup starts, follow the prompts to install the software. If software installation fails and the software used an installer, follow the prompts to allow the installer to restore your computer to its original state. Otherwise, exit setup and then try rerunning setup to either complete the installations or uninstall the programs. Installing software is only one part of software management. Often after you install software, you will need to make configuration changes to your computer or the software itself. After you install software, you can manage its installation using the Programs and Feature page in Control Panel. More than any other versions of Windows, Windows Server 2008 takes advantage of the features of the installer programs used with your software. This means you will have more configuration options than you otherwise would. And you can use the Program and Features page to reconfigure, repair, or uninstall software by following these steps. First, in Control Panel, click Uninstall a program under Programs. Second, in the name list, select the program you want to work with, and then select one of the following options on the toolbar. Change to modify the program's configuration. Repair to repair the program's installations. Uninstall to uninstall the programs. Uninstall or change to uninstall or change a program with an older installer program. When you are working with software explorers, you can view details about running programs configurations by selecting currently running programs in the category list and then clicking the programs in the left pane. When you select a program or process in the left pane, you can terminate the process by clicking End Process and then clicking Yes when prompted to confirm the actions. And when you click the Task Manager buttons, Windows Server 2008 opens a Task Manager. And User Account Control seeks to improve usability while at the same time enhancing security by redefining how standard users and administrators' users' accounts are used. A user account control represents a fundamental shift in computing by providing a framework that limits the scope of administrator-level access privileges, and that requires all applications to run in a specific user mode. In this way, UAC prevents users from making inadvertent changes to system settings and locks down the computer to prevent unauthorized applications from installing or performing malicious actions. Unlike earlier releases of Windows, Windows Server 2008 and Windows Vista make it easy to determine which tasks standard users can perform and which tasks administrators can perform. You might have noticed that the multicolored shield icons next to certain options in Windows wizards and dialog boxes of Windows Server 2008. This is the permissions icon. It indicates that the related option requires administrator permissions to run. In Windows Server 2008, regardless of whether you are logged on as a standard user or an administrator, you see a user account control UAC prompt whenever you attempt to perform a task that requires administrator permissions by default. The way the prompt works depends on whether you are logged on with a standard user account or an administrator account. When you are logged on with a standard user account in a workgroup, you are prompted to provide administrator credentials as shown in the following screens. In the domains, the prompt shows the logon domains and provides username and password boxes. To proceed, you must enter the name of an administrator account, type the account's password, and then click OK. The task or applications will then run with administrator permissions. When you are logged on with an administrator account, you are prompted for consent to continue as shown the following screen. The consent prompt asks your approval to continue. The task or application will then run with administrator permissions. The process of getting approval prior to running an application in administrator mode and prior to performing actions that change system-wide setting is known as elevation. Elevation enhances security by reducing the exposed or an attack surface of the operating system. Prior to elevation and display of the user account control prompt, Windows Server 2008 performs several background tasks. The key task you need to know about is that Windows Server 2008 switches to a secure, isolated desktop prior to displaying the prompt. The purpose of switching to the secure desktop is to prevent other processes or applications from providing the required permissions or consent. Elevation, prompts, and the secure desktop are aspects of user account control that affect you the most. Although they seem too restrictive at first, these features prevent users from making inadvertent changes to systems, system settings, and lock down the computer to prevent unauthorized applications from installing or performing malicious actions. The key components of UAC that determines whether and how administrators are prompted is admin approval mode. By default, all administrators except the built-in local or the administrator accounts run in and are subject to admin approval mode. Because they are running in and subject to admin approval mode, all administrators except the built-in local administrator account see the elevation prompt whenever they run the administrator applications. In a domain environment, you can use Microsoft Active Directory-based group policy to apply the desired security configuration to a particular set of computers. Simply configure the desired settings to a group policy object, GPO, that applies to those computers. For group configurations or for a special case, you can configure these security settings on a per computer basis using local security policy. To access local security policy and configure UAC settings. Following this step. First, click Start All Programs, Administrative Tools, Local Security Policy. This starts the Local Security Policy console. Second, in the console tree, under Security Setting, expand Local Policies and then select Security Options as shown in figure. Third, double-click User Account Controls, Admin Approval Mode for the built-in administrator account. This opens the Related Properties dialog box shown in figures. Select Enabled to turn on these settings or Disabled to turn off this setting. Click OK. Fourth, double-click User Account Control. Behavior of the elevation prompts for administrators in admin approval mode. To turn off these settings, clear the Define this policy setting checkbox, and then click OK. To turn on and configure these settings, select the Define this policy setting checkbox, and make a prompt selections, and then click OK. Run all administrators in admin approval mode. Select Enabled to turn on these settings or Disabled to turn off this setting. Click OK. Switch to the Secure Test Desktop when prompting for elevations. Select Enabled to turn on these settings or Disabled to turn off this setting and click OK. Maintaining application integrity to help maintain internal consistencies and application integrity. Windows Server 2008 defines two run labels for applications, standard and administrator. Windows Server 2008 determines whether a user needs elevated privileges to run the programs by supplying most applications and processes with a security token. If an application has a standard token, or an application cannot be identified as an administrator application, elevated privileges are not required to run the applications, and Windows Server 2008 starts it as a standard application by default. If an application has an administrator token, elevated privileges are required to run the applications, and Windows Server 2008 prompts the users for permission or confirmations prior to run the program, run the applications. Application access tokens with Windows Server 2008 applications are said to be either Windows Server 2008 compliant or legacy. Any application written specifically for Windows Server 2008 is considered to be a compliant application. Applications that have been certified as compliant with the new Windows Server 2008 architecture have the Windows Server 2008 compliant logo. Any applications written for an earlier versions of Windows or not certified as compliant is considered to be a legacy application. Distinguishing between the compliant and legacy application is important because of the architecture changes required to support UAC. Windows Server 2008 compliant applications use UAC to reduce the attack surface of the operating systems. They do this by preventing unauthorized programs from installing or running without the user's consent and by restricting the default privileges granted to applications. This in turn makes it harder for malicious programs to take over a computer. And most applications can run using a standard user access token. Whether applications need to run with standard or administrator privileges depends on the actions the applications perform. Administrator applications require elevated privileges to run and perform core tasks. When started in elevated mode, an application with a user's administrator access token can perform tasks that require administrator privileges and can also write to the system locations of the registry and the file system. Standard user applications do not require elevated privileges to run and perform core tasks. When started in standard user mode, an application with a user's standard access tokens must request elevated privileges to perform administration tasks. Further, the application should write data only to non-system locations of the registry and the file system. Application run labels because of the UAC, the processes related to installing and running applications have also changed. In earlier versions of Windows, the Power Users group gave users specific administrator privileges to perform basic system tasks when installing and running applications. Applications written for Windows Server 2008 do not require the use of the Power User group. Windows Server 2008 maintains it only for legacy applications compatibility. Windows Server 2008 detects application installations and prompts users for elevations to continue the installation by default. Installation packages for Windows Server 2008 compliant applications use application manifests that contain run label designations to help track required privileges. Application manifests define the application's desired privileges as one of the following. Run as invokers. Run as the applications with the same privilege as the users. Run as highest. Runs the application with the highest privileges of the user. Run as admin. Runs the application with administrator privileges. Windows Server 2008 protects application processes by labeling them with integrity labels ranging from high to low. Applications that modify system data, such as disk management, are considered high integrity, while those performing tasks they could compromise the operating systems, such as Microsoft Internet Explorer, are considered low integrity. Applications with lower integrity labels cannot modify data in applications with higher integrity labels. Windows Server 2008 identifies the publishers of any applications that attempts to run with the administrator's full access token. Then, depending on the publishers, Windows Server 2008 marks the application as being a Windows Server 2008 application. A publisher verifies signed applications, or publishers not verified unsigned applications. When you are installing or running the applications, the elevation prompt is designed to help identify the potential security risk of installing or running the applications. First of all, the prompt is color-coded. Secondly, the elevation prompt displays a unique message depending on the category to which the application belongs. Configuring run labels by default, only applications running with the user's administrator access token run in the elevated mode. Sometimes you will want an application running with a user's standard access token to be in elevated mode. For example, you might want to start a command prompt windows in elevated mode so you can perform administrator tasks. In addition to application manifest discussed previously, Windows Server 2008 provides 3 different ways to set the run label for applications. You can choose to perform one of the following. Running the application once as an administrator. You can run an application once as an administrator by right-clicking the application's shortcut or menu items and then selecting Run as Administrator. Always running an application as an administrator. Windows Server 2008 also enables you to mark an application so that it always runs with administrator privileges. This is useful for resolving compatibility issues with legacy applications that require administrator privileges. The last part we show you for today's section is configuring application installation and run behavior. For workgroup configurations or for a special case, you can configure these security settings on a per computer basis using local security policy. To access local security policy and configure UAC settings, following these steps. First, click Start All Programs, Administrative Tools, Local Security Policy. This starts the Local Security Policy console. Second, in the console tree, under Security Settings, expand Local Policies and then select Security Options. Third, double-click the settings you want to work with to display its Properties dialog box. Fourth, all settings related to application installations and run behavior can be defined and then configured. Make any necessary changes and then click OK. Repeat this procedure to modify the related security setting as necessary.